Welcome back to the Masters of Phyrexia. I am your host with my co-host, and we are today talking about all things Phyrexia. All will be one. You will be one. And to be one, you got to hit that like and subscribe button, baby. And if you don't want to be completed and you want to be immune, you have to hit that share button and send it to someone so that they also can be immunized. So that's how this works. Is
everybody's getting completed with the EAT, the completed.
And so we are in spoiler season. The magic story is done. We're past it. Ben, we're now getting card previews. There were leaks, but we can talk about them now. There's cool card images that we can talk about. There's modern playable cards. Maybe we're going to talk about some thoughts on what happened in the story, your vibes. What do you know that's happened so far? We're gonna do part one of our new Phyrexia conversation, and by new Phyrexia, I mean Phyrexia all will be one. That is my first statement. I keep calling it new Phyrexia, even though
you and I first hung out. I believe we met, and I think it was just before the original new Phyrexia. It was like literally months before, because I'm pretty sure the first set that we ever played at the store together was Rise of the Eldrazi. So New Phyrexia was next, and we both played and opened a lot of it. Actually, incidentally, I told you this the other day. One time at one of the drafts, there was like a giant stack of chaff somebody had left. They'd like opened a box, obviously. It was a mixture of like Chinese and American New Phyrexia uncommons. And I just like, the owner was like, yeah, go for it. And I took them and put them in a box. And over the years, those cards have gone up so much.
Oh, yeah.
There was like 5 Noxious Revivals. They're like $7 each now. I found 4 Triumph of the Hordes the other night. That card's $15. Yep. They were literally worth 3 cents at the time. They were in the trash pretty much, which is hysterical to me. But it was 13 years ago. So, I mean, it makes sense. The equivalent back then, if we were talking about a card from 13 years prior, we would have been talking about Tempest, which is pretty old. So it's interesting to watch. Anytime we go back and try to do the whole, we're throwing back and redoing a set, or trying to harken back to the vibes of a set, there's like trying to make it cool and new. There's always the thing of the things that were most powerful and unfair about the previous version, we can't repeat. We have to change them and make them a little different. And so we've seen this happen over and over again with Ravnica sets, and we've seen it happen with Zendikar sets, and we're now getting the newest version of that. And this is the first time we've seen Phyrexian mana since New Phyrexia, which is cool. It's exciting to see it come back. It was obviously one of the most powerful design decisions ever. And so, like, how are they using it now? But I think there's a lot of cool stuff to talk about here. I like these cards. I like quite a few of the previews. Are you stoked on it? You think it's cool?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is actually in some ways, I think this is Wizards' magna opus. And we'll see how stuff goes in the next set, which is like the war that follows. But just like the art direction, the world that is so specifically Magic the Gathering, and one of the most horrifying possible things. The story that's been going into this has been honestly like the closest thing to a horror movie Wizards has done. And they've done a few close ones. That's not even true. They've done a lot of horror movies. This one's wild. Actual stakes are at large. The mechanics I think are cool. I think I actually kind of my gut feeling is that this is a closer set to Shadows than Battle for Zendikar, or a closer set to Return to Ravnica than Battle for Zendikar, where it feels like so far what I've seen, slam dunky. I think like the way they've reiterated on mechanics has been smart, while also offering cool ideas, and they're able to kind of really hark back to things in interesting ways. And the first thing I want to talk about is the mechanics. So we can kind of start there. But before I drag you into my story under Dome, Phyrexian Arena. So let's talk.
Well, hang on. Before we, I thought you were going to say, before we get into all of that, we want to do a quick shout out to a few different things. One of which is we want to thank the patrons, patreon.com/the MMcast. Many of you got to hear us talk about the menu and other cool movie Hollywood stuff in the pre-show today, which is always fun to talk about. Patrons get that early. You get the full uncut version plus the little convo there. So check that out. And we appreciate you guys supporting us doing that. Talk to the folks, Alex, about Alter Sleeves and what they're getting by supporting.
So if you are a patron, you get a for the last 4 months. So this is the last of this, and then we're figuring out what'll be next after that. So you get this cool artwork. Bam, as an alter sleeve. These are inner sleeves that go on cards. This is Lightning Bolt, and anyone that is up to this month that has been a patron for all four will get a playset, and so on. So that's really, really exciting. And shout out to them if you go there and you want to check out using the code the MMcast, they'll help you out. Also, I want to shout out specifically to TCG Player. If you're looking to buy cards like the cards we're talking about, or you want to pre-order some MTG 1 hotness, they're there for you. You can also, if you go through Channel Fireball, they're where we live as a podcast beyond just the YouTubes and the iTuneses, and appreciate sending them some love as well. And just letting them know that you watch the show and Channel Fireball is making it happen. So thank you to all of our supporters and sponsors, and thank you to our patrons as well. Now,
wait, hang on now. No. I look forward to this. We are going to get into our set review, but there is a trivia component of this show that we do every single show. We're going to do it. I've got one for you. I'm going to make you do this. The way this game works, guys, and sometimes if you follow... So what'd you say?
I'm hiding behind my microphone.
If you guys have followed us on TikTok already, Alex, where can the folks follow us on TikTok? Where can they listen to our TikTok
MMcast podcast?
The MMcast podcast. If you guys have followed us there already...
podcast.
Yeah, you saw Renee does that. You saw Renee on the show with me a couple weeks ago here, and you guys will sometimes get these trivia bits that pop up there. So we are in an artifact heavy set. There is one very iconic Magic card. It's called Ornithopter. It has been around forever. It's been around since antiquities. It was the first ever 0-cost artifact creature. Here's my question for you, Alex. How many 0-cost artifact creatures, and I'm talking not XX, 0. It actually has a 0, and it is an artifact creature. Have there been, and can you name all of them?
Naming is not going to happen.
We're going to give Alex the thing where he gets to describe them. If you guys are thinking about them, the way this works is he's going to hem and haw for a second here. And if you know the answer to this question, you got to name how many, and then you have to name all of the ones that there are. And if you put that in the comments and you're right, good for you. If you don't know it, you have to like, comment, and subscribe to this channel, this video. That's how the game works. It's enough hemming and hawing, Alex. What's the number? Describe them.
Ornithopter Memnite. Easy slam dunks.
Both exist, yes.
There's Battle Sphere, I believe it was called, or something sphere. It's the it's
what in the heck is sphere?
Stars that pop out of it. I believe it has an XX count, like converted, or star converted mana cost, and just like dies immediately unless you do something. I believe it costs 0.
These have to be a 0. They have to be 0.
It costs 0.
Oh.
All right, let me name another one. There's also a wall, and I think those are the 4. I think there's 4.
Okay, first and foremost, Alex is correct. There is 4. However, what you're describing, only kind of accurate. So what are the two?
In my head, what do they look like? Here, let me just. I'm bringing them up.
He's looking them up. Alex is cheating right now. He's looking up the cards.
Well, I gave my answer. It's got Gerard on it, and it's like shooting like a star looking like a big jack is one of them.
One of them is a wall, and one of them is not.
I said wall.
Yeah. Shield Sphere is the wall. So 0-6.
Shield Sphere is a wall? Oh, did I just combine them together?
Yes.
Oh, it's Phyrexian Walker is the other one.
It's a 0-3 from Visions. I think Alex got that wrong. He was pretty close.
I combined the Shield Sphere into one thing. Yeah, it looks like a jack.
Yeah, I mean that card is sweet. Shield Sphere is a classic.
Yeah, so I got this one. I missed the Walker. So I got
it's a Visions card. I'm actually shocked.
I knew how many there were. I was like pretty confident there are 4, and I just forgot. I like separated Shield Sphere into. I like thought Phyrexian Walker was the wall, and Shield Sphere was the other card. I knew it had like it has like weird counters. It gets -1/-1 every time.
I appreciate and respect the effort there. 4 is the correct number. You had some good instincts there. I do think it's kind of fascinating that since Phyrexian Walker came out in Visions, which would have been like 1996 or something. There's only been one printed, one 0-cost artifact creature printed. Memnite was the only one, which was like 2011 or something, or 2010 or 11.
There's been 0-cost non-artifact creatures like Rograk.
Yeah, but specifically with how iconic like Ornithopter is, and with the reason they did Memnite, and like it was trying to throw back to that old style. I'm just surprised that we haven't seen another one. It's been so long, like almost 25 plus years. We've seen only one. So anyway, that is this week's trivia question. Alex, you fought admirably. We can decide collectively in the comments if Alex, do we give him credit for that win or
not?
No?
If I get it. I said 4. The original question was 4. I said names
I'm
and
impressed that you got the number correctly. I'm impressed with that.
Okay, finally, my turn. We're talking Kess, Ben. Infect is gone. We're talking toxic. Okay, so Infect, for all of our fans of the podcast, modern staple mechanic is creatures that do damage to players, give them poison counters equal to how much damage they would be dealt instead of damage. And they do damage to creatures and -1/-1 counters. Has been a modern staple of the format literally since the format's inception. Extremely not popular isn't the word. You either love it or you hate it. It's very controversial. I would argue it's probably more beloved than behated, and the people that behate it are often whiny. And shock, just calling you all out if you're listening to this podcast. But it comes with some flaws, and Morrow in his design article kind of talked a little bit about this, and some of this we kind of knew ahead of time. Infect as a mechanic, and it's one of the reasons it was in Modern Horizons 2 originally and they had to cut it, is it doesn't really allow you to half-ass it. You have to either every creature in your deck has to have an Infect, or none of them should have Infect. They don't do anything if you're not trying to go all in on a strategy, other than a few specific ones that are really combo kills that might as well say they do 40 damage or 20 damage depending on the format than they are actually Infect cards. And so that was one of the challenges going into it. Another challenge is that -1/-1 counters for a limited environment is something Wizards doesn't want to ever do again. Makes me sad. I love the -1/-1 counter sets are some of my favorite of all time. I love the Scars of Mirrodin block. I love Amonkhet block. I love Shadowmoor. So one tier out for the -1/- counter in my heart. That's slowly.
I'm okay with the -1/-1 counter thing. I think that protecting against the complication in a limited environment is an okay thing to stay away from. It's not like, I don't think it was a necessity, but I'm okay with it. I think toxic is cool enough, but I think my issue with it, and I know we're going to go down this road further, but I think my issue with it is that the old thing you're talking about, which does turn out to be kind of combo-y, is exploitable in a way that changing the ability to the way they've changed it, it's like they don't play that well together. And I think it makes me a little sad, because backwards compatibility is one of the most impressive things about Magic to me.
I guess two things. One, from what we've seen, they've designed the cards to play well together.
Sure.
Right? Or at least there's definitely some plants that these are for Modern. For instance, there's and the art will go up, and I will look up what it's actually called. There is the
one green guy.
rare. There's Venerated Rot Priest, which is 1 green for a 1/2 Phyrexian Druid, toxic 1. Whenever a creature you control becomes the target of a spell, target opponent. Whenever a creature you control becomes the target of a spell, target opponent gets a poison counter. So that means your spells and their spells, and that's just an instant add to Infect, right? And every little piece of this card was designed for Modern. The fact that it's a 1/2, meaning that it is Renin 6 proof. The fact that it has the ability for when you target your creatures, it adds 1 poison to your opponent. So you now get around one of the big flaws of just there being a blocker in the way. This gives you reach, etc. It itself can't use the pump spells to do infect damage with those spells, but each of pump spell adds 1, and they'll do 1 itself. And it also makes it so if your opponents try removing your spells, they also protect them. And there's also cool combos, right? You can do the gut shot thing, where if you can get your thing to 10, gut shot kills them. You could do the spell skite move. Have you seen this?
No.
If you have 2 spell skites in play in this and you cast any targeted spell, you win the game.
Oh, because you keep redirecting.
Yeah, you can redirect the thing to each of your spell skites, so it keeps triggering and giving them infinite poison counters.
As long as you have the 2 life to pay enough.
Yeah. You need to have more life than they don't have poison counters. I do think there's benefits too, right? And one thing in infect it was always, and this is what they said, right? Toxic is a mechanic that allows them to let these cards be good when you don't have infect online, but they still can infect your opponent out. And they're giving a lot of tools to still be able to do that, which I think will benefit the old poison decks, because there will be weird spells that we might see, like a +2/+2, and an opponent gets a poison counter, or +2/+2 proliferate and stuff like that. But what's cool is the backup plan for infect that also was always there, right? There was always kind of the option, and there are many games won in infect decks where you just pumped Noble Hierarch instead. Your opponent went down to 14 because they're a Jund deck and they fetched twice and Thoughtseize twice. They're at 14, and you have the 3 pump spells in their hand. They tap out because you didn't have an infect creature. You just had a Noble Hierarch, and you're like, I attack for, a 1 with a 1/2, or maybe you have 2 Noble Hierarchs. I attack with a 2/3 Noble Hierarch, and then +4, +4, +6, you die. And they're like, wait, how did you kill me with that infect? And like stuff like Venerated Rat Priest. And then the other good one that I've seen so far is the white one. Have you seen this too? The Mother of Runes.
Oh yeah. The one you can pay the Phyrexian to tap it and protect, make it unblockable.
But the protection gives that creature toxic, meaning that, and that does add, right? Like giving your creatures toxic is as basically a +1/+1 pump spell in an infect deck.
Well, I think what it's interesting about these cards, and where also, I mean, let's also note that white card is legendary, so it's cool from a commander perspective as well. Like, it's cool that we now have like a 1/1 for 1 that has toxic. Like, that's a cool thing that did not exist before. But I think the thing that stands out to me here is we've played Highlander Gauntlet and talked about it on the show for years, and we don't play it as much as we used to, but I do have this deck that I've always played against you in Gauntlet, which has been a green-white it's sort of like an infect deck. It plays 10 infect creatures, it plays a bunch of double strike creatures, a whole bunch of pump spells, and tricks. It's almost like a combination of infect and hexproof in Modern. It's like playing a lot of the same ideas of those decks, right? It's basically trying to go all in with some pump spells and win the game in a 1v1 format. But what is interesting about that deck, and where I think it reflects to what we're talking about, is that it was never going to be tight enough to play proper infect because it's a 100-card singleton. So I always had to balance the idea that this isn't going to be an infect deck. This is going to be a deck that can win with infect, but if I don't have an infect creature, I have to win with double striking pump creatures. So Rot Priest is exactly the card that bridges the two strategies. And I think that's why what you're saying about Modern makes a lot of sense to me. Rot Priest in its own right could be like, instead of us seeing a deck list pop up on Goldfish in a few months that's like, blue-green infect or whatever, it could be like green X Rot Priest, right? Like that card's powerful enough with cheap spells that if you resolved a Rot Priest and protected it, you might be able to storm out and win. There could be a situation where that's the engine card combined with a bunch of cheap spells. You never even have to attack. You just cycle through a whole bunch of spells in like a Jeskai Ascendancy type of style of deck and just win. Because as long as you mentioned it with Spellskite, that's powerful in itself to protect your creature. If this is supposed to be the engine card of your deck, you play a turn 1 Rot Priest, turn 2 Spellskite. Now you're just setting up to draw into the ideal hand to win the game. It almost sets up a whole different strategy. So I think that what they're doing here is pretty cool, that it expands such a myopic sort of narrow strategy. It's just that a lot of these cards that are good, they don't make the already good strategies and infect that much better, other than 1 or 2 cards. Most of them are like,
but that's
hard
true
to make.
Every mechanic ever, right? Like if when they printed a bunch of Merfolk and Dominaria United, 1 Merfolk made the deck better.
True,
right?
True.
Like getting 1 new card for infect is like kind of insane. But like the other point I wanted to make is the other thing you couldn't do because of infect and what it did, you couldn't push infect creatures. Most of the infect creatures are boring. The main infect creatures that see play, for the most part, are vanilla 2 or less, or have some version of evasion, and that's it. Right? Like,
Right.
and what's cool about what we're seeing here is now with Toxic, because they don't have the like, this is going to be pumped and it's going to give -1/-1 counters and it's going to do all these other things just inherent in Infect. It just has Toxic. Now we can make him Mother of Ruins. We can make them do cool things that are like way more pushed and more interesting. And so you'll have like more, what the cards that will see play in Infect decks in Modern are the ones that are like utility spells that just happen to have Toxic, so that they like can add to the main game plan, but then are actually useful versus just like, is this a 2-mana unblockable Infect creature? Otherwise, I don't want it. So that's, I think that's the other interesting feature, right? You get to be a lot more creative with this mechanic. Like you have stuff like Kuramax the Rat King, which is 3 black. All of your rats get Toxic 1, and it has Toxic, and it lets you like draw cards. And you have like, yeah, I think that's the thing. You get like, there's literally a Infect white or a Toxic might Bitter Blossom in this set.
Yeah, I saw that. You lose, right? and if you have like, what if they have 3 or more poison counters, your creatures get lifelink or something?
Yes, which does bring us to the next mechanic, and that is...
Well, hang on, before we move on, because the one thing we didn't mention is there is a card called Tyrannix Rex, which is green 4 for an 8/8, can't be countered, trample, ward for haste. It has Toxic 4. So it does state players dealt damage from this card receive 4 poison counters, right? So like, that is the push. They did like keep in the set the idea that you could do more than 1 toxic damage with an effect. It's just they put it on a 7-mana 8/8 trample card. So
well,
like,
I mean, and we don't know what it'll all like. There was the preview card in the thing is Paladin of Predation, which is 5 green for a 6/7 with Toxic 6 and can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. Like if your opponent's deck doesn't have a 3x, this kills you in 2 turns. That's a limited card that has nothing to do with Modern, but like,
they didn't balance it down to Toxic 1 being the only poison effect, I guess is my point. Yeah. They still made it you could do more than 1 poison damage. They just made it that, Toxic 1 was much more of the common effect you'd find on cards, and then all the rest of them had clever ways to augment that. So you were saying next card.
Next mechanic, which is related, is Corrupted. And Corrupted is the ability of, it's threshold for poison, right? If you have 3 or more poison counters, you can use the Corrupted ability of things. One of the cute ones is the Seed Core, which is you can tap it to make any mana of color to spend only on Phyrexian colored spells or creature spells. You can tap it to make one colorless. It's a sphere, which is a type of land, but then you can tap it to give target 1/1+2/1 until end of turn, which is the opposite of Tree of
Pendelhaven.
Or Pendelhaven. So this is the Seed Core, by the way, is like the central core of where the massive tree that's connecting Phyrexia to every other plane is, based on Kaldheim. And that's like each of the spheres are the different layers that belong to the different like things, different praetors. And so this one is a Pendelhaven is a giant tree city, right? This is the giant tree portal maker, and it's a reverse version of Pendelhaven if you have Corrupted. To be honest, I think this is another card that could just see play in Infect, because you play one of them, and then for the most part, you can use all of the creatures in Infect. All of the creatures in Infect are Phyrexians. I believe they've all been errated to be Phyrexians now.
Oh, is that true?
Yes, I believe all Phyrexia faction cards became Phyrexians.
So like Glistener Elf is a Phyrexian now?
I believe so, yes. I'll look up the Scryfall to confirm really quick before.
Oh, because to me, that's really interesting. When I read this card, I was like, this is really cool. I think this card is really powerful. When I read this card in the first place, my thought was this deck cannot afford to have, a colorless source on turn 1 as a land. It's not going to be able to do that. So you're saying that almost all of them.
Glistener Elf is now a Phyrexian Elf Warrior. So they made all of anything that has Infect is now a Phyrexian. They errated everything retroactively. So now there still is the problem that deck like needs to be able to tap for green mana for all of its pump spells and some of its other spells. So I do think playing more than one of these is super suspect, but playing one of them is not the worst thing I've seen. And it also allows you to play like the white card we mentioned, right? The Might, the legendary creature. Like if you wanted to play some of the other colors other than being the standard bug or blue green or black green. You could maybe do black green white stuff that noble hierarchy, and then go back to noble hierarchy even, right? That's like something that's cool too, is you could do green blue white now. You can actually do Bant because they're adding enough white effects that offer poison. But corrupted is a cool, there's a bunch of cool ones. I think this is, they mentioned that this is the first mechanic they came out with when they had infect still in the file, and -1/-1 counters are still in the set, which was, this is a way to make it so that if you're playing 1 to 3 infect creatures in your deck, they're still relevant. You don't have to get to 10 for the infect counters to be good. You need to get to 3, and then a lot of your cards get powered up, and then maybe you kill them, or those cards help you kill them, right? So that's why this exists. Is I think one of the things they wanted to do in this set is make it so that creatures that are doing poison damage and decks that are playing with creatures that don't do poison damage aren't just like siloed.
Well, yeah, I also think the thing you said a second ago is true, which is that it means they can push the other effects. And I like there are a lot like proliferate is one of my favorite mechanics of all time. It's one of the mechanics I think that is the coolest. It's marginal. It was never pushed too hard. So the cards that have had proliferate over the years have always been kind of like just borderline playable. But like there's a few that are cool. Thrumming Bird comes to mind as one of my favorites. I was always a big fan of that card.
Mm-hmm.
The way they interact with planeswalkers. And I think something like Toxic 1 and these cards being designed that way certainly makes proliferate more exciting. And it probably means they can push proliferate a little harder as a feature, because obviously if you have infect push the way it used to be, you can't really push that and proliferate at the same time. It just makes poison the only thing anyone would want to do.
Yeah.
But if it's somebody's getting only one poison counter at a time on average, then a card like Thrumming Bird's not even good enough. It's I mean, it never was good enough, but it's especially not good enough. It's way too slow. You have to that becomes a very average card.
Right. And I think there's things there was stuff in War of the Spark that first kind of started reinvigorating proliferate, and I think there will be more and more stuff that we see here that makes it stronger and stronger. So and proliferate is one of the new mechanics, right? Or that's the returning mechanic. I think it's like the one that Wizards likes the most because it's super safe in the way that they know how to handle it. It plays well with a lot of different mechanics. It plays well with planeswalkers in a cool way, which is relevant here. It plays well with infect counters. It plays well with energy. It plays well with Mirrodin sets in general, because often the Mirrodin sets are the ones that have, and we'll get to that as a mechanic soon, like charge counters is what it's been classically. Here it's called something else. And so I think it's like a really popular thing to lean on that you normally wouldn't necessarily see. Yeah, I don't have a lot of new to say proliferate. I think to your point, we're going to get some cool cards. We already got a Telling Time. But instead of 4 cards, you look at 3 cards, but you proliferate now, which is cool, which is experimental augury. But I think there's definitely some cool stuff. The next mechanic, I guess we'll jump to that, is oil counters playing into proliferate, right? Which is instead of what in historically there's been charge counters, right? These are counters that you can build, and it builds up. They function as a special type of counter on artifacts and creatures that, like, the more you have or the less you have, you can use them for different things. Every single card uses them totally differently, but the cool thing is that they interact with proliferate, and they interact with each other, right? There are ones that, like, if you can move the counters over to something, or you can use oil counters on any permanents you control, so they'll have a little bit of that energy vibe to them. While also being less like, this is on a player. If I get rid of a permanent that has it, I can get rid of it.
Yeah, the oil counter cards that I think are, by the way, just stepping back to the experimental augury card you mentioned, that's like the card I always wanted in proliferate. Like, it was just always was the card that I wanted. It was like an actually good draw spell that proliferated. Every time they gave me a draw spell for proliferate, it was like,
3
Tezzeret
mana
mid or 3 mana instant, or like, it just was never actually what I wanted. Whereas like I can hold this up with a counter spell and benefit off of it, which is totally what I want. So super awesome. But oil counters, from a stylistic and thematic standpoint, you kind of mentioned this, but it's what the theme of the set is. People, Phyrexians taking over, completion, all that makes more sense than charge counters. And I've seen a couple cards in the set that have stood out to me that I think are especially cool with oil counters. I really like. There's one in particular actually that I thought was really cool, and I can bring this up as like a fan of this, like, I guess, like, type of card maybe or whatever. And you guys have heard me talk about this, but those Thermo Alchemist type of cards are like some of my favorite. and I know, and people love them. Keswick Flamebreaker and, Electrostatic Field and all those. They're always kind of expensive commons once the sets pass, because I think players like the trigger gutter snipe sort of ability. I know those types of cards are extremely popular. Like, I love them, and we've talked about them on here a lot. This card is called Sawblade Scamp. So it's a red for a 1/1 Phyrexian Beast haste. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put an oil counter on Sawblade Scamp. Remove an oil counter from Sawblade Scamp. It deals 1 damage to each opponent. So what this now is the same type of effect as a Thermo Alchemist or a Firebrand Archer, but it's a 1/1 for 1 with haste already. So it comes down on turn 1 and attacks for 1. Now every time you cast a spell, non-creature spell, it's going to get a counter, and you can sandbag those counters and hold them at instant speed until you want to use them, which means if you have like a multiplier, you can save it for that, which means that if you have, like, again,
you do have to tap them to do the damage.
Oh, I didn't see the tap on the spoiler. What a bummer. Yeah, way less good then. Never mind. This card sucks. I thought it was so pushed. I was like, oh man, this card is the bee's knees. It's my favorite card in the whole set. I'm deflated. I'll throw it back to you, Alex.
Oh no, we killed Ben. We'll keep that whole thing in there. No, I think we're gonna get a lot of really cool stuff based on those cards, and I'm excited to see what they look like. The next mechanic is the main Mirrodin mechanic, and it's for Mirrodin! ! It's, I think, the first time they've ever used an exclamation point in the mechanic. And it's stated in the set when they like picked out what are the mechanics from Phyrexia that are important to bring back, and it was or that people liked, right? There was proliferate, it was infect, it was
living weapon,
Phyrexia mana, and it was living weapon. And what they realized is like, oh, it would be cool to show that the Mirrans are using living weapon in their way to kind of fight against it. And so living weapon is back. And I think they've like started realizing they like just their equipment being creatures at first. They keep doing it. There's, I think, 3 different variants of that mechanic in standard currently.
Yeah, the whole like reconfigure type of thing we have.
Yeah. But here's another one. But what they did differently here is that instead of a germ token, you're making a 2/2 rebel token. First off, rebels are back for any fans of
Lynn Civvy
1999 Magic the Gathering vibes. I don't even know if that's the year that those were coming out. It was
actually for you with that sort of thing. I'm going to give you a lot of credit for a pretty accurate prediction there. I think you're within a year of it. I want to say
I have my guide. Where's my
Mercadian Masks was probably like, it was probably like, it might have been 2000, but it might have been 99. You might be
was 2000. Lynn Civvy was printed in the year 2000.
Oh, Babe knows years. Incredible. Who saw that coming?
But Mercadian Masks then came out in 1999.
Wait,
because Lynn Civvy would have been in the second set.
That was Nemesis, and that would have been so you were correct.
I was right too. Okay, I know that because I have a Magic 30 what's it called box, and it's behind me, and I have everyone like in order by year when the cards came. But what's cool about this set? Rebels are back. That's sick. So get your Lynn Civvies out. Get your old Rebel cards. You can bring them back if you played Modern Horizons 1. There's a bunch of cool Rebels in that. That was one of the actual draft mechanics for the set. So it's cool that they're here. But the benefit of it is that one of the like weird things about the living weapon is every living weapon had to give a power and toughness boost to the equipment, right? Because they're all 0/0, so everything had to be X plus 0 plus 1 at a minimum, if not better, which was like a weird balancing mechanic. They couldn't come up with some cooler equipment because it would be like, oh, we don't want to like make this equipment that's supposed to be like a 1 mana to play it, 2 mana to equip, but it has to be +0 +1 at least.
Sure.
So we can't give it a better ability. Now it could just be like, you get a 2/2. It's a 2, and then when you put on another creature, it doesn't get a power boost, so you can make the abilities cooler or the equip cost less or whatever.
I think the mechanic name is a little corny. When I read it, I was like, this is a little silly. It doesn't ruin the card for me by any means, but it just was like, okay. And then I do think they had to change it, though, from what you were talking about. The 0/0 germ token is a very Phyrexian idea, so it had to be different than that. But I do think It's the kind of thing that, like, when it's cool and it's new, it's fun. I'm not that stoked that we have so many different sets introducing equipment that come with a creature attached. I don't want that to be the standard version of equipment. It seems a cooler function when it's like a rare feature. Like living weapons, cool that it's a rare feature. So there's that part of me that when I read the preview, I was like, I wasn't that excited about it. I guess just like in
No,
general.
I agree that the fact that we had reconfigure earlier this year or last year, I guess a year ago, I thought we had another one. I'm trying to remember what it was, but makes this less exciting for sure. Like that has been pulled away a little bit. I will
We had
say,
the ones from Horizon. We had the ones from Horizons. I don't know if they were. I don't know if they were named something, but like you
well,
had like the white one, the one that.
Eldraine had some too, right? Eldraine had the like 1/1 equipment that would come in and make a 1/1 token under it, and then
Yeah. Same idea as
like
the
that
Horizon one.
mechanic's been used a few times. Um, yeah, I think for sure it makes it a little less exciting. It's gonna matter what the cards are too, right? I mean, the thing is like all of these are searchable by Stoneforge Mystic, so every single equipment, especially equipments that have creatures attached to them, are significantly more relevant for modern than others because they're good on their own. You can play them as a creature, but you also get the ability to use Stoneforge Mystic the Tutor as just a standard equipment. So I think that's like the one cool feature to them is they're just make Stoneforge Mystic better, and I like Stoneforge Mystic being good. But I agree with you from beyond that it's like the mystique of living weapon and the fact that it's not living weapon and it's like something else makes it less exciting.
Yeah, I agree. Now
I
moving
like
on to
the
your next
choice.
point, which
The
is
yeah
the green red sword.
yeah.
So you can read what the sword does here because it's pretty good. I think I like this card quite a bit.
Well, my first complaint, I don't like the name. I don't unless someone tells me that Forge and Frontier is like a turn of phrase like the other one, like Feast and Famine, Body and Mind, like all of those are
Mm,
things that are like gone together. I've never heard Forge and
um,
Frontier ever, and I hate saying it, ever said together. But Forge and Frontier, 3, equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has protection from red and from green. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play those cards this turn. You may play an extra land this turn. Equip for
yeah,
2.
the card is fire from a pure rate perspective, from like the consistent thing you get from a sword. Now, let me correct me if I'm wrong here, Alex. This is the ninth, or is this the 10th?
Ninth.
This is the ninth, right? Do we still not? What's the one we don't have still?
We have of the allied swords, we've gotten blue, white, black, red. We don't have blue, black.
There's no blue black sword yet. Okay, gotcha. That makes sense to me. Which is dope. There's one more blue sword, guys. Awesome. No, but this card is this card is really good. My evaluation of these swords when I first read them every time actually is almost always exactly accurate. I would say the only time I've been a little off in my mind, like when I look back at it later, was the get an extra land one. Hearth and Home, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
That one I thought was really bad, and I've seen in Commander that it's better than I thought. That's the only one that I was like, this card is more powerful than I thought. But like for the most part, otherwise, like Truth and Justice, I think is kind of crappy. I think like some of the newer ones are not as good.
I think
Classically, the blue red. I always said the blue red one was the best one. Still is the best one. That and Feast and Famine are the two best ones, I guess. But
I would
like
say Feast and Famine is better than the blue red one.
they're equally good in their own style, I think. But they're the two clear like value
Yeah.
ones.
I think they're both very good. Blue red is generically very good. Black green does unfair things. Like that card
Yeah,
is probably shouldn't exist. But like in regards to this one, I actually think this is closer to the top level. One thing I didn't
yeah,
realize when I first read it is you do get to play the land from exile.
yeah. You can
So
play. It's
it
not
is it
cast.
is play. It's not like one of the weird times where you don't get to play the lands from exile. Um, I also think that just in general, the sword is more exciting because it's in standard and
Yeah.
pioneer. Like one
Oh,
of the
true.
problems with the swords that are be printed in Modern Horizons 1 and 2 is that swords have kind of been outclassed in modern. Even with Stoneforge Mystic being added, unless you are literally Sword of Feast and Famine or Sword and Fire and Ice, and really Sword of Feast and Famine doesn't even see that much play because Drago isn't as necessary there, you're not gonna see play. And that means these cards are just kind of like printed into Commander, but they're like weirdly balanced because they're printed into modern, so they like were made not as good as they maybe should be if they wanted to be commander playable. But in with sort of Forge and Frontier, which Heart and Home did do successfully, right? They made that for commander, and that card's really good in commander, but wasn't really even intended to be that great in modern. Sort of Forge and Frontier feels like so sick for standard and pioneer, and such a cool mechanic, the card to put into those formats. And it's cool to see a sword in those formats again. And I don't think it's overpowered in any way. Without Stoneforge Mystic, these cards wouldn't have been as broken as they were when Stoneforge Mystic and Jason the Mind Sculptor with Cobblade was running all of them. So I'm pretty hyped. This is pretty cool.
It doesn't deal damage. It doesn't gain you life. It doesn't kill a creature. It doesn't like get a card out of their hand. It's basically giving you uber value, and it's random uber value as well, because you're exiling cards. Like, you have to play them that turn. It's to me, like, what I like so much about it is that it's the kind of card that if you resolve and like connect with, you're going to be super happy. Like, it's going to feel really good to play this card and to connect with it, which is like my favorite type of Magic card. I think swords, the general 3/2 cost of the cast that equip, I've found them to be outclassed in almost every format. I find them to be
clunky,
very clunky. I always found them to be a little clunky, but I find them to be super clunky now in a way that, like, even in Commander, like, you can certainly get value out of a sword. 3 and 2 is not that big in Commander, but also what you're getting out of even the best ones. The only one in Commander that is truly a game changer is Feast and Famine, because against a whole table and tapping your lands is a big deal. But like, Fire and Ice in Commander is totally fair. Like, it's not that good of a card. It's an extra card and 2 damage. Like, who cares?
I think in Commander, the best 2 are Heart and Home and Feast and Famine.
Yeah.
And then to be honest, War and Peace, I think, is like underrated.
I think not Body and Mind. The black-white one gains you 3 and gets a creature back.
Gaining 3 is not. I don't know. Yeah. I like the Sword and War and Peace. The ability to do damage equal to your opponent's cards in hand can just murder players in Commander, right? Like, sometimes that player just has more cards than they should in their hand, and you can also build around it. Like, I love putting it in any of the decks, and I'm Reliquary Towering in this deck, because it's like, then I'm gaining 20 life, right? I'm getting 10 life every time I hit. The problem with Sword and the other problem with Sword, the black and white one, for me, is that the decks I am most often wanting to play these swords are often like tempo control decks that play stuff like Stoneforge Mystic, which means I don't have any creatures that are in my graveyard. Why would I have creatures in my graveyard? Those aren't spells.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair. But yeah, getting back to the card, I think this is a big win from a design perspective. It's one of my favorites. I think it also hits on a green-red combination of abilities that I think it hits in a really successful way. Like, I aside from the name, which I agree with you, I didn't actually think about that until you brought it up. It's a silly name. The other names are great. Forge and Frontier, I've never heard of before. I don't know why they named it this. But aside from the name, this card feels like a really big win from a design perspective. It's like, what do we want a green-red sword to do? Extra land. It uses the red draw card ability. It doesn't feel overpowered. It feels like a fun card to play. That's a big home run. How close are we to the full spoiler on the set?
We're not all the way there. The leak revealed every rare in the set, I believe, but we haven't gotten every mythic, and we definitely haven't gotten most of the commons and uncommons.
Blue black may be in the set then.
I believe there's only one sword. We have that confirmed.
Okay, got it.
So I have 2 guesses for blue black. I would guess that we get it in one of the next 2 sets. Like, they decide to use the return, the final finale of Phyrexia to finish the 10 card cycle. I think that would be cool. I think that would fit. So I think it's possible we get it in the next set or in the Aftermath set. It's blue black. What do you think it does?
Well, I want to first of all commend them for taking 20 years to finish the cycle. I think it's pretty baller that they started a cycle and they actually sandbagged us for 20 years. Like, that's pretty wild. I think in today's Magic, geez, what does blue black do in today's Magic?
So Mill 10, it can't be a repeat effect, right? None of the cards repeat effects. So it can't be
So it
mill.
can't just be draw a card. Blue can't be draw a card.
It
So
can't be
blue's
draw
got
a
to
card, and
be.
it can't be mill 10. I have one thought that black could be exile target graveyard.
Okay, could it be that and like bounce a permanent maybe, or like a non-land permanent or something like that?
It could. Is none of them bounce? Is there not a bounce?
No, none of them
The
do. None of
blue
them
white
do
one
the.
is proliferate and put a +1/+1 counter on something. It's by far the worst one. Blue green is mill. Blue red. Yeah, I think it could be bounce.
What if it was boomerang though? What if it was not hood or
I think that would be too strong.
return
I think
target
it would be too
permanent?
dangerous to be a toxic gameplay pattern.
I mean, here's my thought with that. It's so expensive, especially in standard, which would be the most dangerous format, to resolve, equip, and connect. That even if you you'd have to like let's say you did this and you connected twice or something. Returning a land 2 turns in a row, like by the time this is coming down, it's probably like turn 4 is when you're connecting at the earliest, is very good, but like that's like not messed with. The casting and resolving, you have to get through the fact that costs mana.
Yeah, but if they
I
stumble
think,
once, they lose because you now have made it so they don't get to play a land ever again.
well, you have to connect every turn. I mean, they could
How are they
kill
going
the
to stop you from connecting if they don't have lands?
well, they're going to have 3 or 4 lands at that point. So any spell they draw that I mean, sure, it can get countered. You could be right.
It
It
has
could be good.
protection, so they can't remove it. It has protection for one of the 2 best colors to protect it. Yeah, honestly, I think just bouncing a creature is too much. I think it's like, if anything, I almost want to say like it might be another option. I think something that would be cool is like put a flying counter on target creature you control.
No, that's weak. That would be disappointing for me.
Sure.
That'd be disappointing. I think it's got to be. Well, I guess it depends what the black one is. If you're saying the black one is exile a graveyard, that's not a affect the board situation. That's an affect another zone situation, which can be good. But if it is not good, then it's useless. Which is kind of a little bit of the what's the black red one is the one that gets rid of a planeswalker, right?
Black red kills a planeswalker and an artifact.
And that's the one for me that when I'm always like, yeah, I mean, sure, if the right situation arises, that's going to be great. If it doesn't, then this effect is useless. So like, this doesn't do enough for me. I think one of the abilities has to give you value, which is why I like the green red one so much. So if black is gonna, if black's gonna exile a graveyard, then I think blue has to give you something. It's got to bounce something, and if black, lose a life, draw a card or something, then I think blue could be bounce a creature, maybe, or a flying counter or something like that.
It could be loot, or it could be loot 2, right? Like we've never gone on a loot. That's another one that we have never seen. So it could be like draw 2, discard 2, or draw 1, discard 1. Draw discard 1 is a lot worse than draw 2, discard 2. It also can be a mechanic. Like it could be connive. If it, depending on what the mechanics of the set are, it could be
surveil, connive, something.
Surveil or something. Yeah, it could be like Surveil 3 would be a sick one too, to be honest. That feels very blue-black. Surveil
Agreed.
3, exile target graveyard. Or exile the graveyard of the player you did damage to. I think that could just be what it is. And like, I agree with you, it wouldn't be very strong, but I think that's intentional because it's being printed in the standard.
Yeah. That's cool though. Yeah, I think that's a fun idea. I like Surveil 3. I think that's a very cool card selection. Fill your graveyard, blue black. Like it gives you some pretty significant value type of deal.
Yep. And then now we enter the last mechanic of the set. The one that a lot of people would think maybe would never be printed again, but we've known it was because we got our first hint of it about a year ago with Kamigawa, and that is Phyrexian mana is back. Now, outside of my understanding at this point, and we could be wrong as cards get previewed, but my understanding and based on what they've announced is that there are only 5, the only cards that have Phyrexian mana in their converted mana cost or their mana value or their mana cost, whatever you want to call it, are the 5 completed planeswalkers. It's in the planeswalker completion ability. Otherwise, it's only going to show up in the activated abilities of permanents and creatures, and maybe spells as like a kicker effect, though we haven't seen that. But basically, like, they learned their lesson. The cost of a card going into play needs to just be what it is. But activated abilities can be whatever you want.
The Planeswalker ability is really interesting, right? So the way they've decided to balance this is that every 2 life you pay for the cost of a Planeswalker that reduces it, reduces the actual loyalty of that Planeswalker by, is it 1 or 2? Is it, if you pay 2 life, it reduces it by 1 or by 2?
It reduces it by 2 loyalty.
So like from the cost of a Planeswalker to the loyalty of a Planeswalker, it actually balances really nicely when you look at these cards. It's
been a lot cuter than I expected it to be.
Really elegant, because Planeswalker balance and ability balance on Planeswalkers is sort of, in many ways, is like the most holistic balance you can get in Magic. They have to kind of balance the minus on most Planeswalkers to be like the bad version of a spell. So if you're going to give a Planeswalker that you can play for cheaper, that means that like it's probably going to come down at its cheapest in a situation where its minus is just not very good. Like, and you can kind of see it in all of these cards, but I think the variability and the cost is what makes it so cool. So I'm proud of them for doing that. I think it's a really nice way to use it. None of them feel overpowered. They all feel appealing to cost for their cheapest cost, but we tend to think about Phyrexian mana as nothing. It is life. Paying 4 life or something to get 4 off on one of these is significant. You're 2 untapped shocklands or something like. So it does matter, and I think that that's a great use. I also have, I mean, to be honest with you, I've thought a lot of the Phyrexian mana abilities on the cards in the set have been pretty cool too. I'm not missing the Noxious Revivals and the Mutagenic Growths and the Gut Shots of the set. I mean, those are fun cards, and if they threw 1 in the set for fun, it would be cool, but I don't think it's necessary.
Agreed. And I think like they're just more dangerous than they're worth. But when you get stuff like like with the Nissa card, the fact that it has 2, it's the only one with 2 Phyrexian symbols, and so it like has this massive variability where like as a 7 drop, this is coming down with 7 loyalty and can immediately ultimate. Like you can play this as a 7 mana, all of my creatures get 7 +1/+1 +7/+7 and trample, right? Or you can play it at 6, and now you can build towards that, but you still get to make the fact that whenever you make your plus is making a Phyrexian horror, that's an XX equal to how much loyalty Nissa had at the time. So then that also is a variable piece. Plus, you just have the ability to tick down and just destroy artifacts and enchantments all day, and it can go down as early as 5. Vraska having... Yep.
Well, just because obviously Nissa's going to be on the screen, but anybody on audio, Nissa is green, 3. It is a legendary planeswalker. Nissa, the standard ability is that it comes down with 7 loyalty, completed. +1, create an XX green Phyrexian horror creature token where X is Nissa's loyalty. So the +1, if this comes down that its full deal, is your 7 mana 8/8. Pretty good. -1, destroy target artifact or enchantment. I mean, like, that's if you come down on the full loyalty, like no one's ever resolving an artifact or enchantment again unless it gets rid of Nissa. And then finally, -7. Yes. Until end of turn, creatures you control get +1/+1 for each forest you control and gain trample. So it's Craterhoof. Like, you're playing a planeswalker variable cost Craterhoof, which is also extraordinarily good. Like,
I like this card so much more than I like Craterhoof for 2 reasons.
Craterhoof's boring.
Yeah. So in my... Craterhoof is maybe my least favorite commander card. It's so boring. It's so easy to get into play on 80 different ways, from tutors to reanimates to rebuying it to blinking it to whatever. What I like about this in that context is that this is something that you don't get the abuse in the same way, which is interesting. But at the same time, it's the modularity of it is great. Craterhoof Behemoth in your hand sucks. Right? You want it to be able to cheat it into play somehow, at least in your hand without a way to cheat it into play, without a sneak attack. Nissa Ascended Animist in your hand is great. I want to draw this on turn 5. I want to draw this on turn 6. I want to draw this on turn 7, right? I want, now, not modern playable for sure, but in all of those situations, you're getting this really cool versatile card that lets you build the things and is really powerful. So I love the versatility of this card. It's kind of the same how I feel with basically almost all of the completed walkers. Like, I love Jace, right? I think people are a little down on Jace right now. I think he's really underrated. I am sad that if this is the last Jace card of all time, which it might be, I hope it's not. I have theories on why it could not be, but if it is, it's sad that it's not. Like I'm a little nostalgic for Jace breaking the format when it enters it. Right, we didn't get Jace the Mind Sculptor. We didn't get Jace Vryn's Prodigy. We got. So I think this is possibly in the top 4 Jaces, if I was going to be honest with the world. But I don't think it's like standard defining, which is a little sad. One big tier for Jace the Perfected Mind. But Jace, it's 2 blue Phyrexian blue. So it can be a 3 mana planeswalker or 4. Legendary Planeswalker Jace has completed. +1 until your next turn, up to 1 target creature gets -0, -3, -0. -2 target player mills 3 cards. Then if a graveyard has 20 or more cards in it, you draw 3 cards. Otherwise, you draw a card. So -2 to draw a card until you have 20 cards and just draw 3. And then -X target player mills 3 times X cards. It comes in at 5. A few key features. Both of the mills are target player, so you could target yourself, and often you're going to want to target yourself. For mill decks in general, this just out of the gate, if all you wanted to do is it's 3 mana mill 9, right? Which is above rate. It's a little below rate for what the mill decks currently do in Modern. If you then ignore every other ability on it, right? Like if all you're using this for is 3 mana mill 9, it's fine. But it
costs you 2 life, by the way, if you do that. So it costs you 2 life, 3 mana to get 1 worse than a Glimpse of the Unthinkable minus everything. I do think that's kind of what you were talking about a second ago, as far as the whole, like, we see the Phyrexian symbol in our mind. It's the ideal scenario. It's not the gameplay scenario where you're getting attacked and burned, and like 2 life matters. It's not nothing. It's just a low cost.
And I play my Shocklands untapped, and I thought he's 2 turns in a row. So I don't. I'm living on the edge.
Fair enough.
The only life that matters is the last one. As if you were a completed being like me, you would understand. But yes, fair. But on the other hand, paying this on turn 4 in those decks, if you don't want to play it on turn 3, is mill 15. Is the rate you're getting, which is better than that.
Almost twice as good. Like that's I called you last night when I saw this card, and we talked about it a little bit, and like, yes, this card to me, in terms of like the versatility you're getting in a mill deck, very strong. The fact that they have Visions of Beyond built into this card as just one of the abilities, like, which is already like such a good card in the mill deck. It's so good. From a pure, like, just linear mill perspective, yes, like, this card is playable if you have any play in the deck. If you have any, you can survive a few extra turns by just like making something happen, whatever. Like, this card's probably going to win you the game. There's a world in which you play this, they don't have an answer, you plus it a few turns, and then it's just game over.
This to me is like, yes, I wanted to start with the mill option because mill is a deck that does well in Modern pretty regularly, and just any kind of tool that's helpful. This is also helpful for that deck, because something that deck can run out into is both ways to stabilize, which this card helps, ways to draw cards and increase your engine, and late game plans. And Jace the Perfect Mind helps with some of those. And that's kind of the part of it. Is I actually think this card's also really interesting in control decks as a control finisher and stabilizer, because I think people are underrating the -3, -0 ability. Jace by itself, when it enters play, negates any 4 power creature or below. Because if it's a 4 power, then it's the Jace and it are trading back and forth, right? I take 1, I'm not ticking up, but you're also not doing anything. If it's anything lower than that, it no longer does damage. This turns Dragavon off. This turns Dragon Rage Channeler that they have off. Its -2 is a cantrip, right? So this comes down on turn 3. You can -2 draw 2 cards, 1 card because you draw a card, and then you mill yourself if you're a deck that can take advantage of it, 3 cards, which often decks that are in Modern are playing. Either you can use it for ramp, right? You can use it for delve, you can use it to get important cards you want in your graveyard into your graveyard. So that's like a pretty decent value play if they don't have a threat. And if they have a threat that early, you can start ticking it out. A 3 mana planeswalker that basically removes a creature from battle is not to be underestimated, especially when what it's ticking up to is a straight up win condition, right? Having one of these in my control deck and I just like play it -3 Ragavan, -3 Ragavan, -3 Ragavan, -9 mill, 27 cards. You've drawn, at that point, like you have 1 or 2 turns left, and like every turn that exponentially goes up on or I guess cubically goes up on how likely you are to kill your opponent with it. And in the meantime, if you want, you could just be using it as a draw. Like once you stabilize, if you don't think that's a game plan, you could just start using it to draw cards and like get to 3 cards a turn off of it. So I think like this, I think Jace is pretty underrated.
This was the card perhaps that I was most excited about well, maybe not exactly that, but I mean, this was a card that I was very excited. Like when I read and I kind of started to do the math in my head of what I thought I could do with it. It definitely feels like the kind of card that's going to be underrated, but like once people take advantage of it, it's a more unique card in its effect than I think several, if not the majority of the other Planeswalkers that are printed here. They're all cool. This just is doing something at a fairly aggressive rate that I think will take only one kink to get broken. Like I don't think it's going to define Modern by any means, but I think this card's going to be around for a while. I think this card's going to be good for a long time.
I guess I will say, I think like one thing I see in this set is all the Planeswalkers feeling extremely versatile. Even the non-completed ones like the Eternal Wanderer. But I do want to finish through the Phyrexia one because I want to finish Phyrexia Mana talking about the other way, because the last monocolor one is Vraska Betrayer Sting. 4 black, Phyrexia Mana, legendary Planeswalker Vraska. It has completed. It has a 0. You may draw a card and you lose 1 life and you proliferate. Which I love. I love a 0 that actually ticks up.
It's sick.
As a -2, target creature becomes a treasure artifact and loses all abilities. And -9, if target player has fewer than 9 poison counters, it becomes 9 poison counters. She puts you just on the edge of death. And she comes in with 6 loyalty. So she can either be a 6 mana, 6 loyalty Planeswalker or a 5 mana, 4 loyalty Planeswalker, which means for her -2, that's either three activations or 2 activations if you just want to tick her down.
Also, the proliferate on the 0 means that if you were to play one and it dies and they're at 9, then you play another one, you proliferate, it's just game over, which is dope.
Yeah. And the other thing that's really cool, I mean, this is less modern. I think she's not very modern playable, which is fine. Not every one of these need to be, but in a commander setting, like she's a great Planeswalker tribal card, right? Like this goes into every Planeswalker deck because the 0 mana proliferate is such a powerful ability in those decks, and you get to take advantage of it in such a cool way. To the extent that I wish her other abilities were worse, so she could have been a 4 mana Planeswalker versus a 6/5, like a 5/4 versus a 6/5. But other than that, I think she's really sick, and like a cool card. We won't talk about all the flavor things I want to talk about. If you want to hear all of my thoughts on the lore and flavor of this set, which I have so many of them, definitely check out my TikTok. I have an entire playlist called Phyrexia. You can watch, I think I have 40 videos in there, all 1 to 3 minute on a bunch of different subjects, including the fact that the 3 monocolored Planeswalkers are the 3 factions that are not Elesh Norn's faction, as well as not the one most likely to rebel. So she didn't complete any pure rivals, and she didn't complete any pure rebels. Well, until we get to Nahiri. If you want to talk about my theories on how Nahiri is going to betray Elesh Norn, that is also there. How all the Dominuses are actually trying to become Phyrexia's trying to recreate Yawgmoth from scratch. All of it, check it out there. Nahiri the Unforgiving, 1 red-white hybrid. Both of the hybrids on that are both complete, so it's a Phyrexian hybrid. And then white, legendary Planeswalker Nahiri. +1 until you're... +1 until your next turn, up to 1 target creature attacks a player each combat fable, which specifically means not a Planeswalker. So it can't attack Nahiri or others. So she protects herself. +1, discard a card, then draw a card. 0, exile target creature or equipment card with mana value less than Nahiri's loyalty from your graveyard. Create a token that's a copy of it. That token gains haste. Exile it at the beginning of the next end step. What I like about this one a lot is it does feel like it's harking back more to Nahiri the Harbinger's mechanics than like Nahiri who cares about equipment.
Yes,
Okay.
the 4 Nahiri from a few years ago that like dig 6 to get it at, like I think it's dig 6 to get like equipment or vehicle or something was a big bummer. Like I've tried that card before and it's never good. First of all, let's talk about the art. Like Nahiri with like the sword arms. Sick. So good.
The Chainsaw Man theme should just be playing in the background if we wouldn't get it taken down off
Yes.
of ads.
Incredibly cool. But then like, yeah, I think the fact that you can cast this at 3 loyalty for 3 mana completed and it comes down, and for 0, for 0 you can grab some creature and put it in play with haste. You can get an equipment like that's
Nahiri
dope.
the Reanimator, the Nahiri the graveyard mechanic character in Red White has always been one of the dopest things to me, and I think she plays pretty well. I think she's not that far away from modern playable. I think she might miss it a little bit, but the fact that she can protect herself weirdly in Commander or in modern, and I think the fact that she's a 3-mana planeswalker that like can come down and like reanimate a Stoneforge Mystic or reanimate a Ragavan the turn it gets played, and you like
Yeah.
can get him with Ragavan with haste is pretty cool. The fact that she doesn't tick tack down at all, like none of her abilities go down, is really cool. I think
It's a little
just like
weird she doesn't have any like negative or ultimate. That's like a little strange. It makes as a planeswalker, she feels like very like value, but like not there's no like inevitability here. It's like you kind of a unique planeswalker design.
yeah, there's a few like the ultimates on a lot of them are just as you can you can use their biggest ability as soon as you play them on both sides, right? Like
Yeah.
even the ones we talked about, Nissa on her full kit mana cost can use her ultimate. Jace's ultimate can happen as soon as he comes into play. It's a -X effect. Um, Other ones like the Wanderer, which we won't talk about today because I want to save like we're running out of time and I want to save the non-completed walkers for next week.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that today's the mechanics of new Phyrexia. That's what today's episode is going to be called. And first looks. And so I like that space more. Ultimate's always kind of like
You ignore them when if ever like you have opened a planeswalker in a random chaos draft pack and you look at it and you don't even look at the ultimate, right? You literally look at the playable abilities. What's the minus? What's the plus? How much loyalty? How cheap? You never think like I'm gonna ultimate this and win the game with it. There's a few planeswalkers over time that because maybe we played with them enough, we sort of know. But I would argue 95% of planeswalkers, the ultimate is totally irrelevant.
yeah. And they're not totally irrelevant. They're win conditions, right? Most planeswalkers have 2 abilities, and if you keep plussing them, you'll eventually get to a ultimate that says I win the game. It's not
But,
irrelevant.
but,
It's just
but
not.
irrelevant in the sense that like most win conditions, when you put them into decks, you win with them sometimes. I have won with planeswalkers in my life. Of the percentage of times I've played a planeswalker in a game, I've won the game using an ultimate like 2% maybe or
Yeah, but
less. Like
that's because you
almost
don't like paying 4+ drops that are
no, I
value
mean
oriented.
even when I've played them, I mean, I've ultimate like I've like minus like ultimated like a Lily of the Veil before, and like I've definitely done it. You find yourself in that situation sometimes where you play one and like it happens, but it's so rare. I feel like you never play them in your deck because you're assuming that's how you're going to win. You always play them in your deck because you assume that's how you're going to get to the
Sure,
win.
but part of the power level of them is that there's an inevitability. One of the reasons you haven't done that is because by having it, you're forcing your opponent to interact with that instead of attacking you,
Sure.
which adds the life gain feature to planeswalkers. I mean, there's also a larger conversation of planeswalkers that we can have maybe next week or this week, in that I think that Wizards is getting rid of them or heavily removing them from kind of the conversation, which I think will be really interesting to see. But we can talk about that later. I'm going to drop that as a preview for next week. Like and subscribe, baby, if you want to hear that conversation. But Nahiri, one of the things that is also cool about Nahiri, more from a story perspective, is so Nahiri is one of the most powerful planeswalkers of all time and currently in canon, right? She single-handedly summoned Emrakul and basically almost destroyed Innistrad. In the story, while you're reading it, basically every time anyone talks about Nahiri, she's like, she's an asshole, but also could just murder me if she wanted to by looking at me the wrong way. For the record, other dangerous ones, Jace is also on that list, which is also
Chase.
terrifying. We'll talk about that. We can talk about the completion of characters too. But I think Nahiri has the potential to, and Nahiri is also famous for not taking from no one, right? Like her whole relationship with Soren is like Soren told me what to do and I said no, and then tried murdering him a few times. So I'm hoping that Nahiri could become the new face of Phyrexia. Like she kills Elishnorn. Like Elishnorn has specifically like avoided completing planeswalkers that were red or white for the most part. They're always like one of the other colors, other than Nahiri. And Nahiri is like the exact two colors that Elishnorn doesn't like to deal with. She's the most powerful planeswalker she completed with, and she doesn't like taking from anybody. Bleep that out. So yeah, that's my little story note. Also Jace is terrifying. I'll just say that before we do the last one.
Can I ask you before we do the last one why? So with the whole like completed angle, and forgive me for being the heathen here who like doesn't completely understand. When characters are completed, we're supposed to believe like they're infected, they can never go back. So if because Jace is completed, like that's the end of Jace. Like it could be the last Jace card because Jace could be dead. Like or any of these planeswalkers. Like the idea is that this is the end game. They're dying.
Yeah, it's a made up story. So literally, like, Teferi exists. Teferi could just go back in time and retroactively undo all of this. Would be pretty lame. As like, in the sense that anytime a major story is told and then the answer is we time traveled and undid it, that sucks.
I mean, when Thanos goes, it's no time at all, and he does the thing with the green, and then turns back and then kills Vision. That's dope. It worked very well in that story, so it's possible.
That was like within the moment, like 30-second buybacks. And I would say they did one of the best jobs I've seen of it. And part of it is because they added cost, right? Yes. At the end of Endgame, they removed half the characters, or at the end of Infinity War, they removed half the characters, but it was pretty blatant that like they were going to come back. And the cost to them coming back was that they missed 5 years of their life. There was an emotional cost to them being removed.
Yes.
I don't think in the next set where it's going to be like a month from now, they're not going to have the same level of cost if they just use an undo button with time travel. What I do think, from a completion perspective, it's like vampirism, like in a lot of meeting, right? Like you are now an evil version of yourself. You no longer have a soul or what. Interestingly enough, in this version, you do have a soul. Like your spark is attached to your soul. That was the big thing they figured out in Kamigawa Block, is how to complete a planeswalker, because they made it so that you don't kill them. They keep their soul, but they're still completed. But that's, there's a debate on what happens. My like personal theory is that they defeat Phyrexia. Elsbeth is going to come back, maybe as an angel, like an ascended angel planeswalker, and is going to have figured out a way to cure the infectiousness of Phyrexia, because that's the thing that's like unbeatable, right? Is that if you like get stabbed by one, you're no longer human anymore. Like you will be completed. And if they can figure out a way to do that, or mass cure people, she should just come back and be like, I cured everyone. Haha, yay. Then that is a option. Other theories are that like Emrakul shows up because the literal every character that locked Emrakul on the moon is now a Phyrexian. Other than debatably Liliana, who arguably didn't put her in the moon, she just fought her off on a field while the other people put her in the moon. But Nissa's Phyrexiized. Jace is a Phyrexian, Tommy is a Phyrexian, and Nahiri is a Phyrexian, and they are all basically responsible for they have all the ability to control Emrakul in some way.
Would there be justification in your mind for Emrakul coming back in some revenge capacity in like another set? Like, is that a cool thing? Do you want to see that, or are you sort of like, come on, guys, Emrakul, we've like seen a lot of Emrakul. I don't need more of this.
This is their big end thing. I think also Nicol Bolas can come back. Jace is one of the two characters that knows that Nicol Bolas is still alive. He's also now Phyrexian, and they might want to turn him into it. The tree, like where Nicol Bolas right now is, he's alive in the meditation realm that was like his like home plane that he created with Ugin just hanging out. And one thing that
who were the three big villains ever? Nicol Bolas, Emrakul, and Ugin or something?
No, Nicol Bolas, the Phyrexians, and the Eldrazi. I think that's a pretty safe. You could like
so Emrakul, Nicol Bolas. When you say the Phyrexians, or you're saying like
Yawgmoth or Elishnorn. You can choose which one, I guess. They're pretty... I think Yawgmoth up to this point was a bigger one just because they were the center of the story, where Elishnorn is having her big moment right now. But I think Elishnorn is probably a bigger villain in the long run. That's a hot take, maybe.
And this really only started in like 2010 or something, when like Nicol Bolas with like Alara. I mean, I guess Nicol Bolas
and Phyrexia have been around since the like second and third set of Magic, right? Like Nicol Bolas has been around since...
Nicol Bolas has been around since Legends, but like the Elder Dragons, that like it was that was different. We didn't have story sets back then, so like and Nicol Bolas didn't come back then until
there's stories back then.
So,
I mean, all the legendary characters in Legends have stories around them, including Nicol Bolas and the dragons and the origins, and there were books back then too. Just because you didn't read them doesn't mean they didn't exist.
Well, no, I was going to say,
another like, big one.
Ascendant Evencar and like Volrath, like that was like, those are like the villains in the old days. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I mean, that's Phyrexia, right? Volrath is a Phyrexian. Ascendant Evencar is a Phyrexian. That's all the original Phyrexian. Those are all Yawgmoth followers.
When you say the Phyrexians, you're referring to like Dominaria villains, basically throughout history
up until now. Like they're all connected, right? It's all a continuous story.
Got it. Okay. So that's like when we're talking about like who would be the big come back and surprise us all, I'm still alive and evil thing.
The Phyrexians are Magic the Gathering's like the Joker or Lex Luthor. Like I'm trying to, that's not even a good example. Like they're the most iconic villain, right? Like if Magic the Gathering is Batman, Phyrexia is the Joker, right? Or if Magic the Gathering is Superman, they are Lex Luthor, right? They are the arch nemesis of the heroes of Magic the Gathering. After that, if you want to say that like the second biggest villain is in Batman, Two-Face, that's Nicol Bolas, right? And if you want to say like the third biggest villain is the Penguin, I guess that I don't know, whatever you want to say is the third biggest.
I get what you're saying.
That's the Eldrazi, right? Those are the three big ones, and I think that they could bring any of them back as a part of the story, or release them as a part of the story to become villains again in the future as they rotate through their main three. They've also set up some future ones. Tezzeret has been set up pretty thoroughly to like literally the story that came out yesterday, which was the last story for this set, was a following Tezzeret, and he now has replaced his body, which was being destroyed by the planar portal, because he made a deal with Elishnorn to help her get everyone to other planes. And the reason he did that is Elishnorn replaced the planar portal that Nicol Bolas forced into his chest to replace it with the Darksteel body. So now Tezzeret is a Darksteel Tezzeret Planeswalker. So he's like indestructible, and he has the little cool spirally star lights going around him. And he's been able to regain a lot of his memories that Jace erased 15 years ago in our time. So now, and he's like rebuilt he has like a super spy network that he's in control of, and so he's like rebuilding that. Limduel, who is an old villain from Magic back in the day, he's the Raven Man, who's the person who's basically been manipulating Liliana to like have the chained veil and all of that stuff. He's also set up to be a big villain moving forward. I know through conversations we've had with people that, you know, that Oko, how infamous Oko was, and also his connection to Garrick and the Kenrith twins, who are being set up as being main characters moving forward. He's set up to be a big bad moving forward. To be honest, I thought Nahiri was going to be a big bad moving forward. And there's going to be some Phyrexians that survive this, right? No matter what they do at the end of this story, there's going to be something. My personal hope, which I think it's one of the most beautiful story moments in Magic, was when Vraska and Jace. So when Vraska was completed in this set, she was used as a trap in a Phyrexian Arena reprint. If you look at the new Phyrexian Arena, I don't know if you noticed that. That's in Modern now.
I did see that, yeah.
Ben's eyes are just like rolling into the back of his head.
I understood that reference. I like the card for Phyrexian Arena, and I did look at the art earlier today. So there you go.
So that is a moment where Vraska is being completed as a trap to lure the characters as they're doing their strike team to blow up the big tree. Jace doesn't handle that well because they're in love with each other. He gives her one last date where he like mind controls both of them to have a date on Ravnica that's really, really, really sweet. And then she turns halfway through the dream, and then she infects him, and that's how they both get infected. It's like one of the more beautiful things Magic has created from a story perspective. Highly recommend it. It's very sad, but I really hope that they're like the Team Rocket of Phyrexia forever. Like I want Phyrexia to be. That's why I hope Jace doesn't die. Right. I hope this isn't the last Jace, but I hope that Jace moving forward is like more of a villain that we have to deal with, because Jace as a villain is terrifying. You've never watched the show Bleach, but for anyone on that list of podcasts that has watched the show Bleach, the main villain in Bleach is a guy named Aizen, and his main ability is that if you see his ability from that point on for the rest of your life, if he is in your presence, he can control all senses that you have to 100% recreate reality around you. Right. So like, you don't know where he is. He could just stab you. You wouldn't know where he is. You could be thinking you're not eating food. Like, the world around you is whatever he wants it to be. Jace has that ability. Jace also has the ability to just erase your mind. Just
Can I ask
kill people from miles away. Read your mind. Control who people are.
I want to ask with Jace, because I'm a fan. Obviously, I've played a lot of Jace cards. I don't know the story as well as you. In the ranking of like most powerful Magic Planeswalker characters ever, obviously Jace is not, unless I'm wrong, Jace is not like on Jace's own as powerful as like Nicol Bolas or like Ugin. Like Jace is still like just a regular, but like in the ranking, how powerful of a human is Jace?
I would say he's easily top 10. So if you wanted to rank them, like I think like Nicol Bolas, Ugin, Nahiri, Sorin are right now like four.
Sorin's
like,
way more powerful than Jace.
Yes.
I don't know why.
He's better than Jace.
Okay.
So Jace's problem is Jace is an idiot.
Really?
So Jace always makes the bad decision. He's like the classic, like, I'm the smartest guy in the room, but I have like no street smarts kind of idiot, right? Like, he's the one that planned the plan to go get this tree, and it was a failure. And it's a failure because Jace is an idiot. Right? He brings Nissa, who's what he brought, because like, oh, there's a tree I have to kill. She knows things about trees, not realizing that if they completed Nissa, which happened, they now have a way to overpower their tree because she can make trees go vroom. He brought along Luca because he has no self-esteem and was like, oh, I need to bring a planeswalker that knows how militaries work because I need someone that's good at a strike team because I can't lead this. I'm an idiot, or I have no self-esteem. So he brings Luca along, and he like completes himself literally within like 30 seconds of arriving on the plane. He shows up and he's like, you're a puppy. And he just touches it, and he's like, you're now my puppy. And the puppy was like, no, you're now my Phyrexian buddy. And then he like sticks cables into him, and he's like immediately completed.
Why did Jace suck so much? I'm confused. I used to love Jace. Now Jace seems like a fool.
No. Jace is an amazing character. These are good story beat characters. He just is not, and part of it is because Jace is too powerful. So Jace is, I would say, probably a top 5 powerful characters in the universe, but Jace is too good of a guy to use. Like, his powers are powerful in a way that is problematic, right? He can just kill people, and unless he's fighting someone like a Nicol Bolas, like one-on-one against other powerful people is a little bit where he has a problem, but he could literally just kill an entire city. He could erase the mind of every person in an entire city block. Just all of you no longer exist.
So, like, compare that to like a Johnny. A Johnny doesn't have any of the same qualities.
No, a Johnny could heal people. He could like fight you really well with a sword, but he couldn't just be like no longer alive.
Got it.
Sorin has some of those abilities, right? Like, Sorin can suck the life out of you. Sorin's an old walker, right? He was omnipresent. He created Abyssin. He could create planes before he was completed. He like vampires exist everywhere because of Sorin. His dad is the first vampire ever. He could planeswalk. He spread vampirism.
Got it.
But now that the mending happened, he got weaker. That's like why Nicol Bolas did his thing. Nicol Bolas is more powerful than Jace one-on-one, right? But he can't do what Jace can do on a wider scale. So it's kind of like 1v1, Jace loses against Nicol Bolas. If I were to it's basically, if I'm gonna fight you one-on-one, you beat me. But if I had to like fight 30 people, I have like what's a good example? You get it.
I get it. Okay. Jace is kind of a fool.
Jace,
he's a lovable fool.
In a messed up way, Jace has like an automatic gun, and you're a tank, and Nicol Bolas is a tank. Right?
Got it.
My gun can't do anything against.
They had to find a way to make Jason like more balanced.
Well, the balance is he doesn't want to use these powers, right? It's ostensively evil. Like, it is evil to kill people by erasing their mind. It is evil to read the minds of your friends and use it to manipulate them. It is evil to like hide, mind control people, period.
Yeah.
But now he's evil, which is terrifying. I don't know how, like think of every mind mage. Like, he has the ability to, like, if we were to fight one-on-one in reality, he could read your mind at every moment and you could never hit him because he knows where you're going to punch before you know.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
My answer, my Jace question is answered. I will still love Jace, but I will look at my Jace cards as they are dumber. In the nicest way.
Everyone thinks Jace is very smart, and that's what gets them into trouble. The last card that's been Phyrexianized, Luca, Bound to Ruin. 2 red, hybrid red, green. 5 mana, can become a 4 mana. 5 loyalty would be at 3 loyalty interplay if you use it for cheaper. Its plus is +1, add red, green, spend this mana only to cast creature spells or activate abilities of creatures. -1, create a 3/3 green Phyrexian Beast creature token with Toxic 1. And -4, Luca deals deals X damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures and or planeswalkers, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control as you activated this ability.
So, I mean, as you activated this ability. So that means that if Luca's the only thing you have when you play Luca, you cannot minus to deal the damage. Like, the minus is useless at that point. You have to make a 3/3
Well, yeah, but you plus, and now you can do it for 3, I guess. Or you -1, so you can do it for 3, I guess.
I think this card's bad.
Yep.
Pretty sure.
Yep. I don't like it either. A lot of people I think Luca's really good. I don't see it.
I can see, like, the plus, you play this, you pay the cost, so now it comes down as a 3 loyalty planeswalker. You +1 it to get green red, like, but you're still having to pay 4 mana to, like, get a. So then you have like I don't know. I think getting like a 3/3 with talk. There's just nothing. This card isn't doing anything on its own when it comes down that is that impressive to me, other than making a 3/3.
I would much rather play Garruk Wildspeaker than this card every time.
Agreed. Yeah.
Which says a lot. Because I don't know if I want to play Garruk Wildspeaker that often. But if I was going to play one, the ability of untapping 2 lands is stronger. You can spend it on any type of creature. You can do kind of cool things with it that's trickier. You can rebuy activated abilities on lands. The Beast is basically the same move. And then Overrun is better than, like, Divided Bite.
Next week, when we have more time, I'd like to get into a conversation about Tyvar, because I'm a big fan.
Next week we're going to do the other 5 next episode we'll do the other 5 non-completed planeswalkers. The last card we're going to talk about today, because it's a little bit of news, and I want to get your vibe on it. Atraxa Grand Unifier, 3 green, white, blue, black, Phyrexian Angel, 7/7. It has flying, vigilance, death touch, lifelink. When Atraxa enters the battlefield, revolve the top 10 cards of your library. For each card type, you may put 1 card of that type into your hand. Put the rest of the bottom of your library any order. Fine. Whatever.
I saw Sperling tweeting about this earlier. I think it was Sperling.
Wait, I haven't revealed the important part before you talk about it.
Oh, go ahead.
In the parentheses, where it normally would say, like on Tarmogoyf, it reminds you of all of the different card types that there are. This card lists artifacts, creatures, enchantments, instants, lands, planeswalkers, sorceries, and battle.
Wait, what?
I knew you hadn't read this yet.
Battle is a card type that we haven't seen yet?
There is a new card type that won't be in this set. It's confirmed will be in the next set. So in March of the Machines, they will be adding a new card type to Magic the Gathering for the first time since Tribal was added in Lorwyn.
And Planeswalkers,
which are also added in Lorwyn. Both added in Lorwyn.
And Tarmogoyf in Future Sight first referenced Tribal, to be fair.
So this is the Tarmogoyf-esque hint, where they printed a card like Tarmogoyf that listed all of the different card types in the set before it came out, to hint that in the next set they are going to add new card types. Also importantly, it doesn't say tribal isn't mentioned, and then the rules manager confirmed basically that if for cards that are being printed into standard, they will not include non-relevant card types. So if the card type isn't in that standard, they're not going to put tribal. But this also means that Tarmogoyf can be one more power and toughness swoller than he could ever have been before.
Very fair.
New buff for Tarmogoyf.
So I read that. I mean, battle. That's interesting. I'm curious to see what battle is.
Oh, I honestly, you couldn't even tell me what the rest of this card says. That's the only thing I wanted to talk about. You could talk about it.
I mean, I love the original Atraxa. This card is a 7/7 for 7 that has 4 keyword abilities. Like what Sperling said on, I think it was Sperling on Twitter, was basically like, this is a complicated way of listing a lot of text to basically say draw 4. Which, like, it incentivizes you to build your deck in kind of a certain way, but it also is sort of generic in the way that you're going to get the value of those cards. So it's like build your deck with variety between types, and you'll be able to get more value off of this draw. But you're paying 7, so it's like if it just said draw 4, I would be like just as satisfied. I would have to work a lot less hard. So I think that is kind of interesting. It's, I mean, look, with design, you have to constantly come up with new ways to make cards interesting. What do you think battle is?
Well, before I guess on Atraxa, I think it's like it reminds me of a Niv Mizzet, right? Similar character too.
Yep.
Like a bunch of mana, you draw 3 to 7 cards, right? And it is probably something closer to 5 on average, maybe 4 on average. Sperling maybe did the math. But it's attached to a lifelinking, death touch, flying, vigilant 7/7 commander that like is 4 colors, right? That is a feature on this card. Like there's only one other 4 color green, white, blue, black commander that exists. It's Atraxa, right? Other than the combo of partner pairs, right? So like that's not an irrelevant thing, and it's cool. Like it'll kill a player if you with commander damage. You kill someone in 3 turns. Okay, what do I think battle is? I have 2 thoughts. I'm leaning in 2 directions.
Okay.
The first direction is something along the lines of like a card that sits in play and switches who controls it. Like once you play it, it like the last person to take damage, or if it's your combat step, you control it and it has an effect of some variety. So like a permanent, right? A permanent that it plays maybe somewhat like a world enchantment, but maybe it bounces back and forth, something like initiative. I think that to me, the more interesting thing is it's a instant sorcery variant.
Instant sorcery battle.
Like we have a bunch of different permanent types. We only have 2 spell types. What does that mean? I don't know. But maybe it's an instant sorcery that just stays in play, right? Like this stays in play, like kind of the same deal. I don't know. Those are my 2 thoughts. I don't know what you can do with instant and sorcery to make something different. Like what is a different instant and sorcery? Why isn't it an enchantment? Like the other was like, why isn't it an enchantment? Now, when on Tarmogoyf, does it say tribal? It just says tribal, right?
Yeah.
So it could be battle enchantment, battle artifact, battle creature. Like it could be like tribal, right? And then its purpose is more of a like a rider that allows something to happen. Like, which is maybe interesting. It could be a divider.
Combative, right? Like, so like the word battle would suggest that something is going to happen that interacts between you and a permanent, or you and a player. So like whether it's an enchantment, a creature, instant sorcery, could it be like a sorcery where like you play it stays in play, something happens in your turn, something happens on their turn, and then it resolves in your next upkeep? Could it be like, you know what I mean? Like the concept of fight sort of, but you apply essentially fight or a fight concept to another permanent type, maybe other than just creature to creature. Could it be a spell that is like a fight concept? I don't know. Clash was never very successful. Clash was pretty unsuccessful when they did it back in Lorwyn, and I thought it was a bad effect, and they never were able to find. So
One thought I had is like it's a card that like gives a benefit, like in the most recent unset, they had like separate the battlefield into different like lanes, right?
Yeah.
Like Space Jace does that, right? You have like 3 different lanes you can attack in, and you have to attack in the right one. I can imagine it being like a thing you play, and then you have to, if you attack in the battlefield that you have, like the battlefield of Zendikar, right? Which I think will be what they are, right? I think they're each going to be different planes that are like classics. Then if you attack in that one, you get that benefit of that plane. But maybe only one creature can be in there at a time, and you have to destroy it, or you just control it yourself. So it's like a cool benefit that creatures get to go into that works differently than equipment.
I think the last several new card types they've designed, even if they're only slight modifications on classic card types, have been pretty good. I think like Adventure was really fun. Saga was pretty good. I haven't had much of an issue with most of that stuff. I can't imagine Battle is going to be like Planeswalker is the only one I can think of that was an actual pure different card type. Like it did not resemble anything else. Vehicle was like equipment in its own way, like so if Vehicle was very good. If Battle is a variation on something we've seen, I trust them, I'll be excited to see it.
It's possible that they're also attackable.
Sure. Like a spell, like, and if it resolves, if it has like suspend counters kind of a thing, but if you attack those counters off, then it never happens.
Yeah, or it's like it's an enchantment, but you can't, like, enchantments can't be attacked, right? So it's an enchantment that's like has 10 defense points, and your opponent, and you get, all your creatures get +10/+10 while you have this enchantment in play. That's an insane card, but whatever. While you have the battlefield in play, but your opponent can attack your battlefield to slowly lower that number, so that you plays in the Planeswalker space without them being like the uptick downtick features, right? It's like that. I guess that's the one. Like, what about what the one permanent type that has like a lot of rules on it that maybe are usable in other places are Planeswalkers, and maybe that's just, it's like a Planeswalker variant is possible. What's weird there? Well, what's a little weird is like I think like Planeswalkers in general aren't like the best gameplay. So they're
a bit of a problem, yeah.
So, but maybe Battlefield is the answer to that. Maybe they have less Planeswalkers, but they like the attack another thing and protect it gameplay. I don't know. That's my other thought. I wonder how. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
All right, that is it for today's episode. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll talk to you all next week. Shout out to all of our sponsors. Please follow us on all of the different apps, TikTok, whatever platform, etc. And we will see you all next week. Ben, anything you want to say before you head out?
No, thanks for watching, guys. We appreciate it. Nice to see y'all. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye, everybody.
This has been a production of Time Traveler Media, sending podcasts into the future.